Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the world of medieval jobs so vile you'll be glad you're only listening. Picture the flickering lantern light of a crooked medieval alley, the smell of human waste so thick you can taste it, and the squelch of your boots in things you'd rather not identify. Yes, you're a night soil collector tonight, wading through the darkness to gather what no one else wants to deal with. And let's be real, you probably won't survive this if you had to do it for real. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is, because trust me, I want to know who else is awake with me in this medieval nightmare. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle down the narrow street holding your breath as best you can. A wooden bucket swings from your hand, sloshing slightly. It's the middle of the night, but you're already sweating because the job you've chosen, well, it chose you stinks worse than anything you've ever smelled. You're a night soil collector, the unsung hero of the medieval cesspool. Your job is simple. In theory, gather human waste from the chamber pots and cesspits of the townsfolk and haul it out of town. In practice, though, it's a never-ending game of hide-and-seek with the waste of an entire city. You knock softly on doors, some open, some don't, and you haul away the evidence of what everyone wants to forget. By torchlight, you navigate the slippery, muddy streets, trying not to gag at the sweet-sour reek of fermentation. Chamber pots are passed to you by half-asleep hands, their owners barely willing to crack the door. You wonder if you're more loathed than the plague itself, though at least you're necessary. After all, someone has to keep the streets from turning into a river of filth. The worst part is that you're paid in pennies, barely enough to buy a stale loaf of bread. And yet without you, the waste would pile up until it flooded every street, every doorway, every home. Historians still argue whether night soil collectors were truly appreciated for their work or simply tolerated like rats in the shadows. You haul your bucket down to the river, dumping its contents into a pit so foul it's rumoured to belch up spirits of disease. The moonlight glints off the swirling mess, and you try not to imagine it creeping closer to your boots. Sometimes you hear stories of other collectors who slipped and disappeared, their cries lost beneath the slop. But you're careful, you have to be. The job isn't just disgusting, it's dangerous. Disease doesn't care if you're the cleaner or the customer. You wear a rag across your nose and mouth, but the stench still seeps in, clawing at your throat. Medieval chronicles mention that many collectors carried vinegar-soaked rags or chewed on mint to dull the odour, though it rarely helped for long. Every night you see the same faces in the shadows, a hunched old woman who spits at you as you pass a group of boys who pelt you with rotten fruit. They call you Night Crow, as if your wings were blackened by the filth you haul. You don't bother responding, you just keep trudging. And while you work, you wonder how you ended up here. Maybe you were born to it, your father's father did it, and so did you. Or maybe you're an outcast from another trade forced to take the only job no one else wanted. There's no pride in this work, only the knowledge that you're scraping by night after night. But here's a quirky tidbit: some collectors would sell the waste to farmers outside the city, turning it into fertilizer. Yes, even medieval farmers recognized that human waste could help their crops grow tall and green, provided they didn't mind the smell. It's a dirty secret, but one that made the job just a tiny bit more profitable. You slip on a patch of muck, barely catching yourself. The bucket rattles some of its contents, splashing onto your sleeve. You curse under your breath, but there's no point, no one's listening. The night is too quiet, too heavy with the scent of waste and wood smoke. Your mind drifts as you work. You think about the castle up on the hill where lords and ladies dine on roasted goose and honeyed wine. They probably don't even know you exist except when their chamber pots need emptying, and maybe that's a mercy. Because if they did see you, they'd see the cost of their comfort, you covered in filth, trudging through the cold, just so they never have to see or smell what they leave behind. There's a kind of rhythm to it though. Scoop, haul, dump. The slap of the bucket against your leg, the scrape of the wooden door as it opens, the sigh of relief when it's closed again. You find a strange comfort in the routine, like a monk reciting his prayers. But unlike a monk, your prayers are for a night that passes quickly and a dawn that brings a warm fire. As the night deepens, you pause to rest. You lean against a wall, the cold stone seeping through your ragged cloak. Your hands are cracked and raw from the rough wood of the bucket handle. You wonder if you'll ever get the smell out of your skin. Some say it never leaves you, like a brand that tells the world exactly who you are. A rat scurries past your boot and you watch it disappear into the shadows. For a moment you envy it. Rats don't have to worry about who they are or what people think. They just live scurrying from one filthy corner to the next. In that way, maybe you're more like the rats than you care to admit. Finally, the sky begins to lighten and you know your shift is almost over. You empty the last of your buckets into the river pit, the contents hissing as they hit the cold water. You wash your hands as best you can in a trough, though it does little to remove the stink. You pull your cloak tight around your shoulders and start the long walk home. Tomorrow night you'll be back, the waste will be back, the smell will be back. But for now you can forget it. You can climb into your straw bed and dream of a life that doesn't smell like this one. You tell yourself that maybe one day you'll find a way out. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just who you are, Nightcrow soil collector, the man who keeps the city clean. And as you drift asleep, you can almost hear the whispers of the city itself thanking you, even if no one else ever will. You wake up to the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears, and the sour tang of last night's work still clings to your clothes. But there's no time to linger in bed today. You're off to the fuller's workshop, a place where the stink of human waste turns into the promise of soft, warm cloth. Well, that's the theory anyway. You step into the workshop just as the sun starts to slant through the open door. It's a cavernous room, the walls dark with soot, and the air so thick with steam it feels like you're walking into a cauldron. The smell of urine hits you first, sharp, almost metallic. You wrinkle your nose, but there's no escape. This is the fuller's world, a place of soggy wool, sour reek, and endless trampling. Your job is to stomp the wool barefoot, of course, into submission. It's called fulling, and it's how medieval folks turned rough, scratchy cloth into the warm, soft wool they craved. The process is brutal. You take great heaps of woven cloth and dunk them in a tub of stale urine because nothing cleanses quite like that ammoniac bite. Historians still argue whether fullers truly believed in the power of urine or whether it was just the cheapest solution they had. Either way it works, sort of. The ammonia in the urine breaks down the oils in the wool, softening it up and making it ready for dyeing or wearing. And so you stomp and stomp your feet, turning pale and wrinkled in the warm, sour bath. It's a kind of dance, really. You and the other fullers moving in rhythm round the tub, your feet slapping against the wool in a soggy drumbeat. There's laughter, sometimes quick jokes to break the tedium. Think of it as a foot bath. One of your companions snickers and you manage a tired grin. Because if you don't laugh, you'll choke on the stink instead. Your skin itches where the urine soaks through your calluses. The cloth is heavy and resists every step like it's fighting back. You're just as stubborn. You slam your heel down again and again until your legs ache and your breath comes in ragged gasps. There's no glamour in this job, no nobility, just the cold comfort that you're making something people need. Outside, the streets are busy with merchants hawking bread and honey cakes. But here in the fuller's workshop, there's only the stink of the urine tubs and the dull roar of the boiling vats in the next room. The steam clings to your hair, your skin, everything. You're part of it now as much as the wool you're working. There's an art to it though, if you squint hard enough. You learn to feel when the wool is just right, pliable, soft, ready to be rinsed clean and laid out in the sun to dry. You learn to watch the colour change from murky grey to pale white. It's a small victory, but one you cling to. One of the other fullers, an old man with a toothless grin, tells you a story as you work. They say if you stomp long enough, he wheezes, you'll stomp your way into heaven. You're not sure if he's joking or not. Maybe both. A quirky tidbit in some towns fullers would sing while they worked, turning the endless stomp into a kind of music. Old ballads about lost loves, saints and battles, anything to keep the mind from drifting to the reek beneath their feet. You try a few verses yourself, the words echoing off the wet walls like prayers. The hours slip by, each one as heavy as the last. Your legs are trembling now, but you keep going. Because there's no stopping until the master fuller says so. You're paid by the load, not the hour, and you can't afford to waste a single moment. Finally the tubs are drained, the wool lifted out and wrung dry. You watch as the water, yellow and thick, gushes away through the cracked stone floor. The wool is carried to the rinsing vats, where it will be scrubbed clean of the stink you've spent hours stewing in. You follow your feet numb and your mind buzzing with the echo of your own steps. The master fuller inspects your work with a critical eye. Good, he grunts, though you suspect he says that to everyone. Better than yesterday, you'll take it. In this world, better is as good as it gets. You help spread the damp wool out in the courtyard to dry. The sun is hot on your face, and for a moment the smell of the urine fades, replaced by the sweet scent of the flowers growing wild along the fence. It's a fleeting comfort, but one you cherish. You look at your hands, raw and puckered nails rimmed with grime. It's a badge of honour, you tell yourself. A sign that you've survived another day in the pits. But deep down you know you'd trade it all for a job that didn't stink of human waste. As you head home, your legs ache so badly you can barely climb the steps to your small room. You wash your feet in a basin of cold water, the sharp sting of it, a reminder that at least you're alive. You scrape the worst of the muck from under your nails, though you know the smell will linger for days. You lie back on your pallet, the thin blanket scratchy against your skin. Your dreams are haunted by the echo of your own feet. Stomp, 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 and the sour tang of the tubs. Tomorrow you'll be back in them, wading through the reek, stomping for your supper. 'Cause in the medieval world there's no shortage of wool to be cleaned and no shortage of workers desperate enough to do it. And as sleep finally claims you, you can't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, the old man was right. Maybe if you stomp hard enough, you'll stomp your way out of this life. Or at the very least stomp your way to a night of dreamless sleep. The dawn is already blazing when you drag your feet toward the tannery, a place even the fullers whisper about with wrinkled noses. Today you're working with the tanners, the medieval masters of stink and skin. And if you thought the urine-soaked fulling tubs were a bad brace yourself, you're about to discover the artistry of turning rotting animal hides into supple leather. The tannery squats at the edge of town down by the river. You can smell it long before you see it. The air is thick with the tang of rotting flesh and the sour bite of lime. Flies buzz in lazy spirals above the vats, as if they too are resigned to this stinking purgatory. You step inside and your boots sink into the soft black mud that never seems to dry. The hides are everywhere, piled in reeking stacks, draped over wooden frames, soaking in great vats of milky white lime water that stings your nose. You're handed a wooden paddle and told to get to work. There's no gentle easing in just the sudden plunge into the most revolting job you've ever known. Your first task is to scrape the hair from the hides. You haul a wet, flaccid hide over a curved wooden beam and lean into it with the dull blade. The hair peels away in clumps, clinging to your fingers in greasy strands. Your stomach clenches, but you keep scraping, because this is the only way to turn dead animal skin into something someone might want to wear. Historians still argue whether medieval tanners truly understood how dangerous their job was. The lime water burns your skin if it splashes, leaving angry red welts that sting for days. And the hides themselves are breeding grounds for disease, soaked as they are in blood and filth. But the city needs leather for shoes, belts and armour, so the tanners keep scraping no matter the cost. There's an art to this work, or so the master tanner tells you. You learn to scrape just enough to peel away the hair without tearing the hide. You learn to feel the difference between a hide that's ready for the next step and one that needs another few days in the lime. It's a slow, careful process, one that leaves your hands raw and your arms aching. When the hair is gone, the hides are rinsed and dumped into the tanning pits. These are deep stone vats filled with a foul-smelling stew of oak bark and water, though some tanners swear by using dog dung to help soften the hides. Yes, you heard that right, dog dung. A quirky tidbit, but it's true. The enzymes in the dung help break down the tough fibres of the hide, making them easier to tan. You lower the hides into the pits, the water dark and murky. It sloshes around your boots, soaking into your clothes. The smell is indescribable, like wet earth, and rancid meat so strong it clings to your throat. You work quickly, because the longer you linger, the more it seeps into your skin. As you work, you catch glimpses of the other tanners. Their faces are streaked with sweat and grime, their eyes red from the fumes. Some hum tunelessly, trying to drown out the drone of flies and the gurgle of the pits. You're all in this together, bound by the stink and the necessity of turning death into something useful. By midday, the sun is a hammer overhead, baking the tannery into a steaming cauldron. You pause to drink from a cracked cup, the water tepid and slightly green. But you're too thirsty to care. You lean against the rough wooden wall, your arms trembling from hours of scraping and stirring. A rat scuttles across the floor, bold as a knight in shining armour. You watch it for a moment, wondering if it envies your job or pities you for it. Probably neither. Rats don't worry about the stink, they just live. The master tanner tells you to fetch fresh bark for the vats. You heft a sack over your shoulder, the weight of it biting into your skin. As you walk back to the pits, you can't help but think of the rich merchants who'll wear the supple leather you're helping to create. They'll never know the price of that smooth, sweet-smelling glove or those fine new boots. They'll never see the red welts on your arms, or the grime under your nails. You dump the bark into the vat, stirring it with a long wooden pole. The water froths a murky brew that stinks of earth and decay. You watch the hides bob and sink, imagining them turning from slick raw skin to something strong and flexible. It's a kind of alchemy, you suppose, though there's no gold at the end of this process. Historians still debate how tanners manage to keep going day after day in the face of such foulness. Some say it was pride, a belief that they were craftsmen transforming death into life. Others argue it was just desperation. You're not sure you care either way. All you know is that you're here and the hides won't scrape themselves. By evening your muscles are spent, your clothes are soaked through, and you've stopped trying to keep the stink out of your nose. You wash your hands in the river, but the water does little to remove the stains. The sun sets in a blaze of orange and red, and for a moment you allow yourself to believe that tomorrow might smell a little sweeter. You trudge home through the narrow streets, your body heavy with exhaustion. You pass the baker's shop, the warm smell of bread, a welcome change from the tannery's reek. You close your eyes and breathe it in, letting it wash over you like a balm. In your tiny room, you collapse onto your bed, too tired to even remove your boots. You dream of rivers that run clean and clear of fields of green that don't reek of death. But even in your dreams, the smell of the tannery lingers, a reminder of the world you live in and the work that waits for you tomorrow. And as you drift off, you wonder, is there honour in this work, or just survival? The question hangs in the air unanswered as the night closes around you. You're up before the sun, your breath steaming in the cold morning air. Today's job is one you've dreaded more than any other, worse even than wading through the filth of the cesspits or stomping in those sour tubs. You're the executioner today, the man with the axe, the one who ends lives. Your heart pounds as you walk up the hill to the square. The scaffold is already there, a simple wooden platform raised high above the cobbles. The crowd is gathering, their faces hidden in the early morning mist. You can hear their whispers, the shuffle of feet on cold stone, the soft sigh of dread that seems to settle over everyone. You feel the weight of the axe in your hands. It's a heavy thing, iron-bladed and worn smooth from years of use. You've seen it before, gleaming in the sun as heads tumbled and blood pooled. Today, it's yours. And no matter how many times you tell yourself it's just a job, you can't quite shake the chill that crawls up your spine. The condemned man is brought forward, his hands bound and his eyes wide. You see the fear there, the desperate hope that maybe somehow this is all a mistake. Historians still argue whether executioners felt pity or whether they hardened their hearts against it. You try to tell yourself it's the latter. You have to. The priest mutters his final prayers and the crowd grows still. You step up behind the block, your boots slipping slightly on the damp wood. You force your hands to steady to find that perfect balance between strength and precision. One clean stroke, that's what they say. One stroke to end the pain. Your heart hammers so loudly you're sure the whole square can hear it. You raise the axe, the weight of it pulling at your shoulders. The man's breath comes in ragged gasps. And in that endless second, you're not the executioner, you're just another soul caught in the machinery of medieval justice. You bring the axe down. It's over before you can take another breath. The crowd lets out a sigh, a collective exhale of relief or horror, you're not sure which. Blood spatters the boards hot and bright in the grey morning light. You step back, your hands trembling as you wipe the blade on a rag. The job is done, but the stain lingers both on the wood and in your mind. You wonder if anyone truly wants this job. Some say executioners were outcasts forced into the role because no one else would have them. Others claim it was a family trade passed down like a dark inheritance. You're not sure which is worse. A quirky tidbit, some executioners wore masks to hide their faces from the crowd, an attempt to keep their families safe from curses and blame. You don't have a mask today, just the hood of your cloak pulled low, but you feel every eye on you, every whisper that follows you as you step down from the scaffold. There's no glory in this work, no triumph, just the grim reality that someone has to swing the blade, and today that someone is you. You clean the axe in a bucket of water that turns pink as you rinse away the blood. The handle is slick with sweat and you grip it tighter, telling yourself that the worst is done. But deep down you know the job isn't over. There's always another sentence, another neck laid bare. You think of the condemned man's family, his wife, his children if he had them. You wonder if they'll hate you or if they'll simply see you as another cog in the wheel of justice. You wonder if you care. You tell yourself you don't. The crowd disperses slowly, the buzz of voices returning to the square. The baker's boy sells warm bread to the gawkers, the smell of it sharp and comforting in the cold air. You can't taste it though. Your stomach is too tight, knotted with something you can't name. You pack up the axe, wrapping it in cloth to keep the edge sharp. The master of the square nods at you a silent thanks that feels more like a curse. You nod back, your throat dry. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. Historians still debate how executioners lived with themselves. Some turn to drink, some to prayer, some to the cold comfort of knowing that they were necessary. You're not sure which path you'll choose. For now you just want to get home to scrub the blood from your hands and try to sleep. The walk back is quiet. The sun is higher now, the mist burned away by its warmth. You pass the market stalls bright with apples and cheese, but you keep your head down. You don't want to see the fear in people's eyes, or worse, the curiosity. In your small room you scrub your hands raw, but the red seems to cling to your skin. You lie back on your straw mattress, the ache in your arms a dull throb that echoes the pounding in your head. You tell yourself it was just a job, that the law demanded it and you answered. But the memory of the axe's weight lingers heavy as a tombstone on your soul. You drift into sleep, though it's a restless, broken kind of sleep. In your dreams, you're back on the scaffold, the crowd a sea of blank faces. The axe is in your hands again, but this time it never seems to fall. You're trapped in that moment, the breathless hush before the blade bites, and in the silence you hear your own heart loud and hollow in the darkness. Tomorrow you'll wake up and do it all again, or maybe you'll find a way to slip free of the executioner's hood. But tonight you're just a man with blood on his hands, trying to remember that he once had dreams that didn't smell of fear and iron. The morning is wet and heavy as you set out, boots squelching in the muddy track that leads to the marsh. Today you're after leeches, those slippery little vampires that medieval medicine swore by, even if the cure was often worse than the sickness. You're a leech collector, a hunter in the swamps, and you'll need more than luck to keep your feet dry. The marsh is alive with sound frogs croak from the shadows and reeds hiss in the wind like 1,000 whispers. You wade in up to your shins, the water shockingly cold and thick with weeds. The mud sucks at your boots with every step as if it's trying to swallow you whole. You feel them before you see them. Leeches like slick ribbons of black coil around your ankles and squirm up your calves. You try not to flinch as their tiny mouths latch on, feeding on your blood in slow, steady gulps. It's enough to make your skin crawl, but you're here for them to catch them, bottle them, and sell them to the barbers and surgeons who swear by their healing magic. A quirky tidbit, some collectors in medieval Europe believed that the more a leech drank, the more powerful its healing bite became. There's no proof of that, of course, just the hope that somehow these swamp-dwelling worms could fix what the plague or a bad humour's imbalance might break. You trudge deeper, using a ragged net to scoop at the reeds. Leeches cling to the mesh and you flick them into a wooden pail, careful to keep the lid tight. They'll fetch a few pennies at the apothecary's stall, enough to buy bread, and maybe a pint of weak ale to wash away the memory of their cold-sucking embrace. Historians still argue whether leech collecting was seen as a low trade or a skilled craft. Some say it took a brave heart and a steady hand to walk the marshes. Others claim it was just another filthy job that no one else wanted. As you stand knee-deep in the cold slime, you're pretty sure it's both. You pause for a moment, wiping sweat from your brow. The sun is climbing higher, and the marsh steams like a witch's cauldron. You can smell the sharp tang of wet earth, and something else, something rank that reminds you of death. You wonder how many of your fellow collectors slipped and never came back. The marsh has a way of keeping its secrets. The job isn't just wet and cold, it's risky too. Leeches might be small, but the diseases that lurk in the marsh are anything but. You've heard the stories, men who came home feverish and shaking their skin, flushed with the marsh's poison. And still you come back day after day because there's always a barber surgeon waiting for another bottle of these squirming cure-alls. The marsh plays tricks on your mind. The reeds rustle with every breath of wind, and the water reflects the sky in jagged, shifting shapes. You imagine spirits in the mist, old ghosts of leech collectors who never made it out. You hum a snatch of an old song, half to keep yourself company and half to keep the fear at bay. A heron lifts off from the shallows, its wings huge and silent as it glides away. For a moment you envy it, free from the mud and the cold, soaring above the stink and the filth. But you're stuck here, feet planted in the muck hand slick with marsh water and blood. You catch a leech as it slithers over your fingers, its body cold and smooth as river stones. You drop it into the pail, listening to the wet plop as it joins the others. Your hands are numb now, and your legs ache from standing in the cold. But you're almost done, just a few more leeches to catch before you can haul your prize back to town. Historians still debate how many lives these creatures saved and how many they harmed. The barbers claimed they could cure anything from headaches to fevers to the mysterious bad humours. But some patients never recovered, drained of their strength, as surely as the leeches drank their blood. You try not to think about that too much. You're just the collector after all. The bloodletting is someone else's job. You wade back to the bank, your pail heavy with your catch. The mud tries to keep you clinging to your boots like a jealous lover. but you pull free step by slogging step until you're back on firmer ground. You pour a little water over your hands, scrubbing at the slime that clings to your skin. It doesn't help much, but it's something. As you make your way home, you pass the old willow tree that marks the edge of the marsh. Its branches hang low, trailing the water like a mourner's veil. You pause there, the pail in your hand, and wonder how many feet have trudged this same path. How many lives have passed through this quiet, endless swamp? You tell yourself it's just a job, just another way to scrape together enough to eat. But in the dark of night, when the marsh is just a memory, and your dreams are heavy with the taste of cold water and iron, you'll remember the way the leeches felt on your skin. You'll remember the weight of the pail and the quiet hiss of the reeds in the wind. And maybe, just maybe, you'll remember that even the smallest creatures can carry the hopes and fears of a world that doesn't always notice them. The barbers will take your leeches, and the patients will bleed, and the marsh will wait for you to come back tomorrow. Because there's always another cure to be found in the swamp, even if you have to bleed for it. You're up before dawn again, though the night's cold still clings to your bones. Today you're headed to the darkest corners of the medieval world, where even the bravest souls flinch. You're a gong farmer, a cesspit crusader diving down into the city's waste to keep the streets from becoming rivers of filth. The alley is quiet, the mist clinging to the stones like a ghostly shroud. You shoulder your shovel and bucket the weight of them, already pressing on your spine. The air here is different, heavy, close tinged with a stench that never really goes away. It's the smell of life, you tell yourself, or at least the things life leaves behind. You reach the mouth of the cesspit just as the sky begins to lighten a pale grey that does nothing to warm the chill in your bones. The wooden cover is slick with moisture, and you lift it carefully, trying not to gag, as the first wave of odour hits you. It's worse than any night soil bucket, worse even than the tanner's pits. This is where the city's waste goes to die. Historians still argue whether gong farmers were admired for their necessary work or simply pitied for their lot. You think it's probably both. After all, someone has to do this job. Someone has to keep the filth from creeping up through the cracks in the streets and flooding the world in brown rivers. You lower yourself into the pit, the rope creaking as you descend. The darkness is total at first, the only light a flickering lantern hanging from a hook above. You can feel the weight of the muck around you, the walls slick and cold, as you inch deeper into the bowels of the city. The pit is deeper than it looks from above, and the sludge sucks at your boots trying to pull you down. You steel yourself reaching for your shovel. There's no room for squeamishness here. You dig in the muck, giving way with a wet sucking sound that echoes in the confined space. A quirky tidbit, some medieval cities actually paid gong farmers well for their work because they knew how essential it was. Without you, the whole city would drown in its own waste. That doesn't make the job any easier though. Every scoop is a test of your resolve, every breath a challenge not to gag. You work in silence, the only sounds the scrape of your shovel and the occasional drip of water from above. You can hear the city above you, the clatter of carts, the murmur of voices, but down here it's like another world. A world where the filth is king and you're its unwilling subject. The stench is beyond words, a heavy cloying presence that seeps into your skin and settles in the back of your throat. You tie a rag over your nose, but it does little to keep the stink at bay. You remind yourself that every bucket you fill is one less to fester in the streets above. That's the only comfort you're allowed. Historians still debate whether gong farmers worked alone or in teams. Today you're alone, though sometimes you see others, lean men with hollow eyes and shoulders hunched under the weight of the city's refuse. You nod to each other in passing a silent brotherhood of the bucket. You pause for a moment, wiping sweat from your forehead. The lantern casts long shadows against the slick walls, turning the filth into something almost alive. You shake off the thought. You can't afford to start seeing faces in the muck. That way lies madness. Your hands are blistered by the time you reach the bottom of the pit, your arms trembling with the effort of lifting each bucket to the surface. You haul them up one by one, dumping them into the waiting cart above. The work is endless, but you find a rhythm in it: scoop, lift, dump, like the endless churning of the city itself. A rat scurries across the ledge above you, its red eyes gleaming in the lantern light. You watch it for a moment, wondering if it's as trapped in this world as you are. Probably. You both live on what everyone else wants to forget. When you finally climb out of the pit, the grey dawn has given way to a pale, uncertain light. You're covered in filth from head to toe, your clothes stiff with dried muck. You wipe your hands on your trousers, though it's a useless gesture. The stink clings to you like a second skin. You load the cart, the buckets sloshing with the weight of the night's work. You'll take it outside the city walls to the fields where the farmers wait for your delivery. They'll turn this waste into life again, spreading it on their fields to coax green shoots from the earth. It's a cycle older than the city itself, though you'd never call it noble. As you trudge behind the cart, you wonder if the lords and ladies in their fine manners ever think about where their waste goes. Probably not. They're too busy with feasts and tournaments, too busy to see the men who keep their streets clean and their noses clear. But you know, you've seen it all down in the dark. You've smelled the truth of the city, felt its weight in every shovel of muck. And maybe that's its own kind of power, though it doesn't feel like it when you're scrubbing your hands raw in a bucket of cold water. When you finally reach home, you peel off your clothes and wash as best you can. The water turns brown as it swirls around your feet, but you keep scrubbing until your skin burns. You tell yourself you're clean now, though the smell will linger no matter how hard you scrub. You lie down on your narrow bed, the thin blanket rough against your skin. Outside, the city stirs to life, vendors calling out, horses clopping over cobblestones. But for now you're done. For now you can close your eyes and let the memory of the pit fade. Because tomorrow the city will call for you again. The cesspit's never empty for long, and the world above needs the world below to keep going. And you'll be there, shovel in hand, ready to face the darkness all over again. The sun is a pale coin in the sky as you start out, and there's a chill in the air that makes you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Today you're donning the beaked mask of the plague doctor, a figure as mysterious as he is terrifying, prowling the medieval streets in search of a cure for a disease no one understands. You clutch your staff as you walk through the alleys, the wooden beak jutting out before you like some monstrous bird. It's stuffed with sweet-smelling herbs, rosemary, lavender, mint. A feeble defence against the miasma that everyone believes carries death on every breath of wind. The sick lie in darkened rooms, their bodies shrouded in sweat-soaked blankets, their skin blotched with angry purple swellings. The air is thick with the scent of sickness and something else, something that clings to the soul, and makes you wonder if you're truly helping or just delaying the inevitable. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were seen as saviours or as harbingers of doom. You feel like both. You knock on doors and mothers weep as they beg you to save their children. You press your fingers to hot swollen necks and whisper reassurances you don't believe. You reach for your leather satchel filled with remedies that might be no better than prayers. Vinegar-soaked rags, leeches and dried toads, anything that might fool the disease into sparing your patients. You do what you can, though you suspect the plague laughs at your efforts. A quirky tidbit: some plague doctors believed that wearing a toad around their neck would draw the disease out like a sponge soaking up water. So you slip one into a cloth pouch just in case, even though it seems like madness. In times like these, any hope is worth clinging to. You move through the sick rooms, your staff tapping the floor with every step. This staff isn't just for balance, it's a gentle way of prodding the dying to see if there's still life in them, or if the plague has claimed them in the night. Sometimes there's a flicker of breath, a moan, a plea for water. Other times there's nothing at all. You pause by a girl no older than 12, her face flushed with fever. Her eyes flutter open and she smiles weakly at the sight of your strange mask. "Are you a bird?" she asks, her voice barely more than a whisper. You tell her no, though you're not sure that's the whole truth. In this world of death and shadows, maybe you are a bird, a raven here to carry souls away. You pour a thin broth down her throat, your gloved hands careful and clumsy at once. You don't know if it will help, but it's something to do some way to pretend that you're not just watching death slow dance. Outside, the bells toll again, another soul lost. The city feels smaller every day, the streets choked with fear and the sick. You see carts piled with bodies, the drivers' faces hidden by cloth masks. You wonder if the plague knows your name, if it follows you from house to house like a shadow you can't shake. Historians still debate whether plague doctors truly believed in their cures, or if they were just playing a part for the desperate. You're not sure it matters. Hope is a kind of medicine, even if it's laced with lies. You pause to rest on a low stone wall, your body aching beneath the heavy cloak. The mask is hot and stifling, the herbs inside wilted from your breath. You lift it for a moment, feeling the cool air on your face, but you pull it back down quickly. You've seen what the plague can do to bare skin. A ragged boy runs by, clutching a basket of bread to his chest. His eyes meet yours for a second, and you see the fear there, the silent prayer that you'll never come to his door. You can't promise him anything. You're just a man in a mask, a figure of hope and horror in equal measure. The day wears on and you keep moving from one deathbed to the next. Sometimes you see a glimmer of life, a spark that might yet grow into something stronger. But more often you see eyes gone glassy, and breath that rattles like dry leaves. You offer what comfort you can, soft words, a touch that doesn't flinch, a promise that they won't be alone at the end. You wonder if that's worth anything, if it matters when the world is crumbling under the weight of this invisible foe. As the sun begins to sink, you make your way back to your small room at the edge of the city. You strip off the mask and cloak, hanging them by the door to air out. Your skin is slick with sweat, your hair plastered to your forehead. You wash your hands in vinegar water, scrubbing at the dirt and the memory of death. You lie back on your narrow cot, the smell of herbs and sickness still clinging to your clothes. Outside, the bells toll again, and you close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you like a benediction or a curse. You tell yourself you're just a man doing his best, that the mask is your armour, the herbs your shield, the staff your weapon. But in the quiet of the night you wonder if you're fooling yourself more than the plague. And so you drift into an uneasy sleep, the dreams of beaked masks and weeping mothers following you into the dark. Tomorrow you'll don the mask again, because someone has to. The sun rises behind a veil of low clouds as you lace your boots and slip into the narrow lanes of the medieval city. Today you're the rat catcher, a hunter of shadows and squeaks forever at odds with the scuttling vermin that thrive in the cracks and cellars of these ancient walls. Your tools are simple, a sack slung across your shoulder, a wooden club for quick dispatch and a few scraps of bread to lure your prey. The city has declared war on rats, and you're the reluctant soldier in this daily battle. You take a deep breath, though you're careful not to inhale too deeply. Every alley seems to reek of stale beer, rotting bread, and the sharp scent of urine. You follow the signs of your quarry, tiny claw marks on a wooden door, the faint squeak of a tail brushing past a barrel. In the quiet of dawn, the world belongs to the rats. You learn to move softly, your steps light on the worn cobblestones. Historians still argue whether rat catchers were seen as public saviours or just another kind of scavenger. You suspect it depends on whether the rats are in your house or someone else's. You slip into a cellar, the air thick with mildew and shadows. The rats scatter at your approach, their small black eyes gleaming in the flicker of your lantern. You slam the door shut behind you, cutting off their escape. It's just you and them now, a silent standoff in the dark. You toss a crust of bread into the corner, your eyes never leaving the biggest rat of the bunch. It's a brute, thick-furred and confident, daring you to come closer. You tighten your grip on the club, your heart thudding in your chest. One swift strike, that's all it takes. You swing and the rat crumples with a soft sigh. One down, a dozen to go. A quirky tidbit, some medieval rat catchers kept ferrets or small dogs to help them in their work, furry allies in this endless war. But you work alone, preferring the quiet of your own thoughts to the yapping of a dog or the darting shape of a ferret in the shadows. You scoop the dead rat into your sack, the weight of it no heavier than a loaf of bread, though it feels like a burden all the same. The other rats hiss from the darkness, their eyes bright with anger or hunger. You wonder not for the first time if they know what you are, if they see you as just another predator in the endless cycle of life and death. Outside, the city is waking up. The baker's boy runs past balancing a tray of fresh loaves. A woman empties a bucket of waste into the gutter, the splash of it mixing with the rattle of your sack. You nod to her as you pass, though she turns her head away. No one wants to meet the eyes of the rat catcher. You're a reminder of the filth that scurries beneath the floorboards, the thin line between civilization and the wild. Historians still debate whether the rats were truly to blame for the plagues that swept through the medieval world. Some say it was the fleas that rode on their backs, tiny black dots of doom. Others argue that rats were merely one part of a larger puzzle of filth and fear. You don't know the answer. All you know is that you're paid by the tail, and the city's fear is your bread and butter. You make your way to the next house, the next cellar, the next nest. Each one is the same dark corners, the scratch of tiny claws, the quick darting shapes that vanish at your approach. Sometimes you feel like you're chasing ghost creatures too quick and too clever to ever truly defeat. You pause to drink from a fountain, the water cold and sweet. You watch the ripples in the stone basin, your reflection, a blur of tired eyes and sweat-slick hair. You wonder if you're winning this war, or if you're just holding back the tide for one more day. As evening falls, you bring your sack of dead rats to the guild's weighmaster. He counts them out with a bored expression, his scales clinking as he tallies your payment. A few coins enough for a meal and maybe a pint of thin ale. You thank him and slip away, though the weight of the sack still seems to pull at your shoulder. You wash in a trough, the cold water biting at your fingers. The rat's blood is gone from your hands, but the memory of it lingers. You wonder if you'll dream of their squeaks tonight, the whisper of their tiny feet in the dark. You head home, your boots soft on the cobblestones. The moon is rising pale and watchful as you slip into your narrow room. You close the door behind you, leaning against it for a moment as you let the quiet of the night wash over you. You're done for today, though you know the rats will be back tomorrow. They always are. You stretch out on your bed, the straw mattress scratchy against your skin. Outside, the city hums with life and death, with laughter and weeping and the endless scurry of unseen paws. You close your eyes, listening to the muffled sounds of the street, and tell yourself that you're just another piece of this old city, another shadow in the corners that no one wants to see. Because in the end, someone has to chase the rats. Someone has to keep the darkness at bay, even if only for a little while. And tonight that someone was you. You're up early, the sky still painted with the faintest blush of dawn. The city is quiet, save for the low murmur of the river and the distant call of a rooster. Today you're a messenger, an invisible thread between kings and peasants, lords and soldiers carrying secrets and commands along the narrow roads of the medieval world. Your satchel is strapped tight across your back, the stiff parchment within creaking as you walk. The message is sealed with red wax, the mark of a lord who trusts you to carry his words without falter. There's a strange kind of power in that, a fragile power as fleeting as the breath of a candle flame in the wind. You leave the city gates behind, your boots crunching over gravel and dirt. The path winds through fields dotted with sheep and the first flowers of spring, their delicate petals bending in the early breeze. But you don't have time to admire the beauty. Every mile is another chance for danger, another turn that might hide a thief or a bandit. Historians still argue whether messengers were seen as trustworthy lifelines or as expendable pawns. You feel like both. You're essential, but you're also disposable. One slip of the tongue, one arrow from a hedge, and the message, and you are lost. The morning air is sharp in your lungs, and you move quickly, your eyes on the road ahead. The path narrows into the forest, where shadows pool like ink, and every rustle of leaves sets your heart beating faster. You tighten your grip on your staff, a simple length of wood, worn smooth by your hands. It's no sword, but it's something. A quirky tidbit. Some messengers carried small charms, tiny pewter hands, or iron keys to ward off thieves and curses. You have a coin in your pocket, rubbed smooth by your thumb, a lucky charm you've carried for years. You tell yourself it works, though you've seen enough to know luck is fickle at best. The forest is dark and cool, the air damp with the smell of moss and earth. You hear the faint babble of a brook somewhere nearby, but you keep your focus on the path. There's no time for rest, no room for dreams. The message is everything, and it must reach its destination. The road bends, and you see a shape in the shadows, a figure cloaked and hooded leaning against a tree. Your breath catches, but you force your steps to stay steady. You nod as you pass fingers tightening around your staff. The figure nods back, silent and watchful. You don't look back. Historians still debate how many messengers vanished in these forests. How many were found later with empty satchels and broken bodies? You try not to think about that. You focus on the weight of the parchment against your side, the promise of coin at the end of the road. You stop only once at a small village where the thatched roofs huddle together like gossiping old women. You buy a hunk of bread, the crust hard as stone, but welcome all the same. The villagers watch you with wary eyes. No one trusts a messenger, a man who carries words that could change their lives in an instant. You drink from a well, the cold water sharp and clean. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the bucket's creak wash over you like a lullaby. But the message tugs at your thoughts, pulling you back to the road. The sun is high when you reach the crest of the hill, the city of your destination sprawled out below, like a patchwork quilt of red roofs and winding streets. Relief loosens your shoulders, but you don't slow your steps. You cross the bridge, the river below, a silver ribbon in the light. The city guard stops you at the gate, his spear tapping the cobbles as he eyes your satchel. You show him the seal, the mark of the lord you serve, and he lets you pass with a grunt. Inside, the city is alive with noise vendors crying their wares, children chasing dogs through the alleys. But you move through it all like a ghost, your eyes on the tall stone tower that marks your destination. You climb the steps two at a time, your breath ragged in your throat. At the top, a scribe waits his quill already in hand. You bow low, passing the sealed parchment to him. He breaks the wax with a practiced flick of his wrist, scanning the words with a frown. You stand there, heart still racing, until he looks up and nods. Good, he says simply. You've done well. He hands you a small pouch of coins, the clink of silver a balm to your aching feet. You nod your thanks, though the words stick in your throat. Historians still argue whether messengers were heroes or fools. You're not sure. All you know is that you've survived another journey, another set of narrow roads and silent threats. And for tonight, that's enough. You leave the tower, the weight of the satchel gone, but the memory of it lingering like the echo of a bell. You slip into a small tavern, the warm light and smell of roasted meat. A welcome balm. You find a corner seat, the ale cold and bitter on your tongue. You listen to the murmur of voices around you, the quiet music of the lute by the fire. For a moment you let yourself relax the message delivered and the danger behind you. Tomorrow there might be another parchment, another road, another chance for luck or ruin. But tonight you're just a man with a half-empty mug and a story that no one wants to hear. And as you drift towards sleep, your thoughts tangle with the memories of the road. Muddy tracks and silent forests, the promise of silver and the threat of steel. You're a messenger in a world that never stops moving a thread that binds the kingdom together, and as long as your legs can carry you, you'll keep running. The night is thick with mist curling around the crooked gravestones like cold fingers as you make your way to the churchyard. Tonight you're not just a labourer or a messenger. You're the Sin Eater, a figure of superstition and fear, the last companion of the dead. Your hands are cold as you cradle the loaf of bread and the small cup of ale. Simple offerings, yet they hold a weight far beyond their meagre substance. You're here to eat the sins of the departed, to swallow the darkness they left behind so their soul might find peace. The widow watches you from the doorway, her face pale and pinched. She doesn't speak. No one does when the Sin Eater comes. The dead man lies inside, shrouded in rough linen, his eyes closed to the world's harsh light. You wonder who he was: a father, a husband, a merchant whose coin once clinked proudly in his purse. Now he's just another body in the chill of the night. Historians still argue whether Sin Eaters were true believers or just desperate men. You feel like both as you step inside your breath, clouding in the cold air. The bread is stale, the ale thin and sour, but you don't taste it as you break off a piece and place it gently on the dead man's chest. A quirky tidbit: some believe that the bread would soak up the soul's sins like a sponge, and by eating it you'd cleanse the soul for heaven's gates. It's a strange thought that a loaf of bread could hold so much weight, but the widow's eyes are on you, and the old fears and hopes of the medieval world hang heavy in the room. You kneel by the bed, the wooden floor cold beneath your knees. You close your eyes and murmur the words you were taught, the half-prayer, half-chant that marks the border between this world and the next. The bread tastes of dust and damp as you chew it slowly, each bite a promise to take on what this man can no longer bear. The ale burns a little as it slides down your throat, a thin wash of warmth in the chill of the room. You feel the eyes of the living on you, the weight of their relief and revulsion mingled in the still air. They want to believe this works. They need to believe. And so you finish the last bite, the last swallow, and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. The widow presses a coin into your palm, her fingers cold and quick. You don't look at her, there's nothing to say. You stand your legs stiff and step back into the misty night. Historians still debate whether the Sin Eater's role was a kindness or a curse. You feel the burden of every meal you've ever eaten in this quiet, secretive work. The sins don't weigh on your shoulders, but in the hollow space of your heart, a growing darkness you never speak of. You walk through the churchyard, the mist closing in around you. The stones are old and worn the names of the dead, soft-edged by centuries of rain and wind. You wonder if anyone will eat your sins when you're gone, if there will be a stranger in the night to take your darkness and leave you clean. A fox slips across your path, its eyes bright in the moonlight. You watch it vanish between the stones, a small, silent ghost. You envy it for a moment, free to slip away unburdened by the weight of other people's secrets. You reach the edge of the graveyard and pause, the cold night pressing in against your skin. Your hands smell of earth and bread, and the weight of the coin in your pocket feels heavy for something so small. You wonder if it's enough to buy you peace, or if it's just another piece of silver for a man who trades in shadows. You head home, the fog softening the world around you. The city is quiet, the streets empty, save for the echo of your footsteps. You let the silence wrap around you like a cloak, the faint taste of bread and ale still on your tongue. Your room is dark and cold, but you don't bother with a fire. You lie back on your pallet, the straw rustling beneath you, and close your eyes. You dream of endless tables laden with bread, of voices whispering in the dark. You dream of sins you've never known but have swallowed all the same. In the morning you'll wash your face in the cold water of the fountain and tell yourself it's all just a job. But tonight, in the hush of the city and the soft sigh of the wind, you feel the weight of every soul you've ever tasted, and you wonder if there's any part of you left that's truly your own. Because in this world the dead don't always stay silent and the living don't always see the cost of your quiet feast. But you do. You carry it with you every step of the way. You're up with the first light, the pale glow creeping over the rooftops as you gather your tools. Today you're the gallows builder, the craftsman of death, this silent architect of final justice in a world that believes in the hangman's rope as much as it believes in prayer. Your hammer is worn smooth from years of use, the handle polished by sweat and calloused hands. The wood you carry is rough and splintery, stacked high on the cart that creaks beneath its weight. Each beam, each plank is a silent testament to a fate you'd rather not dwell on. You work in the square, the heart of the city where all eyes will gather when the time comes. You measure the space with careful steps, your boots scuffing in the dust, as you trace out the stage of final judgment. The square smells of old hay and spilled beer, but your mind is on the work, on the weight of the wood and the finality it will carry. Historians still argue whether gallows builders were respected for their skill or shunned for their role in death. You don't bother with such questions. All you know is that the scaffold must be strong, the beams true, or the executioner's blade won't be the only horror of the day. You lay out the timbers with a mason's eye, fitting the mortise and tenon joints with a precision that would make any carpenter proud. But there's no pride in this, not really. The gallows is a stage for suffering, and your craft is just the grim choreography that sets it in motion. A quirky tidbit, some medieval gallows were left standing for years, a constant reminder to the townsfolk that the law never sleeps. You try not to think about that as you drive each iron spike home, the clang of the hammer echoing in the empty square. The wood is heavy, but you work quickly. Your hands are steady, your mind focused on the task. You wonder who will mount these steps tomorrow, whose last breath will hang in the still morning air. It's not your place to ask. You're just the builder, the man who shapes the last stage of another man's play. As you work, townsfolk drift by their eyes, sliding over you with a mixture of respect and unease. You're part of the machinery that keeps their world turning, even if they'd rather not see the cogs up close. You keep your head down, your focus on the hammer and the wood, though you can feel their stares like a cold draft on your neck. Historians still debate whether gallows builders were paid well for their work or if they did it out of grim necessity. You'd say it's both. The coin is decent enough to keep bread on the table and a roof over your head, but there's no escaping the truth of what you build, no matter how full your purse might be. By midday, the frame is taking shape. The uprights stand tall and straight, the crossbeam fitted snugly at the top. You test it with your weight, your boots slipping for a moment on the worn wood. It holds, and you breathe a little easier, though your stomach still knots at the thought of what will come next. You pause for a drink of water, your throat dry and dusty. The sun is high, the air heavy with the scent of the forge and the tannery. You wipe sweat from your brow with the back of your hand, the dust turning to mud on your skin. A boy runs by barefoot and laughing the innocence of his laughter, cutting through the hush of the square. You watch him go, a small bright spark in a world that's grown too used to shadows. You wonder if he'll remember this day, this scaffold, or if it will fade into the jumble of childhood memories. The final piece is the noose, a length of hemp rope, coiled neat and tight, ready to bear its grim burden. You run it through your fingers, testing the weave, the rough fibres catching on the small cuts in your skin. It's a tool like your hammer or your saw, but it carries a weight that no blade or beam ever could. You secure it to the crossbeam, the knot tight and sure. There's a kind of ritual to it, a quiet finality in the way the rope swings gently in the still air. You step back and look at your work, the scaffold stark and waiting in the pale afternoon light. Historians still debate whether the gallows was a symbol of justice or of cruelty. You're not sure you care. You're just the builder, the man who shapes the wood and ties the rope. The questions of right and wrong are for others to argue over. You pack up your tools, your hands aching from the day's work. The square is quiet now, the scaffold standing alone like a grim monument. You turn away your boots soft on the cobblestones and make your way home. You wash your hands in a basin of cold water, the dirt and sweat swirling away in grey spirals. You tell yourself it's just a job, just another way to feed your family to keep the fire burning through the long nights. But in the quiet of your small room, you can still feel the weight of the rope in your hands. You lie down on your narrow bed, the creak of the straw mattress loud in the silence. You close your eyes and dream of sawdust and cold iron, of the quiet dignity of well-fitted wood, and the heavy hush of final justice. Tomorrow the executioner will mount the steps you built. The crowd will gather their voices a dull roar in the morning light, and you'll be there somewhere in the crowd watching the scaffold do what it was made to do. Because in the end, someone has to build the gallows, someone has to shape the stage for the last act, and today that someone was you. The night is thick and close as you slip through the graveyard gates, a shovel slung over your shoulder and a lantern flickering in your hand. Tonight you're a resurrectionist, a body snatcher, a midnight digger in a world that fears both death and the secrets it leaves behind. The moon is a thin silver coin overhead, its cold light glinting off the wet grass and the crooked stones. The grave you're after is fresh, the mound of earth still loose from the burial just days before. You tell yourself it's just another job, another way to make a few coins in a world that doesn't always pay for honest work. Historians still argue whether resurrectionists were driven by desperation or by the hunger of the surgeons who paid for their midnight harvests. You suspect it's a little of both. After all, the university needs bodies for dissection, for study, so they can learn to save the living, and you need the money. You pause by the grave, your breath misting in the chill air. The shovel feels heavy in your hand, the wooden handle worn smooth by the grip of countless other hands before yours. You begin to dig, each shovelful of dirt a soft thump in the quiet night. The earth is damp and clings to your boots, the scent of it rich and loamy. You try not to think about the body below wrapped in linen and already slipping away from the world of the living. You try not to think about the family that stood here just days ago, their tears watering this same soil. A quirky tidbit, some resurrectionists wore thick scarves doused in vinegar to mask the smell of the grave. You tried that once, but the sharp tang of the vinegar mixed with the earthy reek of the grave in a way that made you gag even harder. Now you just breathe shallow, and try to keep your thoughts far away from the bones you're about to uncover. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, the lantern casting long flickering shadows against the headstones. The night is alive with small sounds, the rustle of leaves, the soft sigh of the wind, but you've learned to listen for other noises too. The crunch of a footstep, the sharp bark of a dog, the whisper of a watchman's breath. You work quickly, your muscles aching with the effort. Historians still debate whether resurrectionists felt any guilt for their trade, whether they saw themselves as thieves of the dead or as secret allies of the living. You're not sure it matters. In the end, the body will be laid out on a cold table under the bright light of the surgeon's lamp, and you'll be paid enough to buy bread and beer, maybe even a night without dreams. The shovel hits something soft and you feel a shiver run through you. You dig more carefully now, your breath coming in short gasps. You scrape the last of the earth away, and there it is, the linen-wrapped form pale in the lantern light. You work quickly, your hands sure and practiced. You slip a rope under the shoulders, careful not to tear the cloth. You haul the body from the grave, the weight of it pulling at your shoulders and your heart. You pause for a moment, your hands on the cold, still form. You whisper a quick prayer, though you're not sure who you're praying to or if it matters. You bundle the body in burlap, tying it tight and slinging it over your shoulder. It's lighter than you expected, though the weight of it sits heavy in your gut. You douse the lantern and slip back into the darkness, the grave behind you, just another scar in the earth. You make your way through the silent streets, the burlap bundle shifting on your back with every step. The city is asleep, the only sound your own footsteps and the soft creak of the rope. You move quickly, ducking down alleys and hugging the shadows. You're a ghost in the night, a shadow in a world that fears the things you do. Historians still argue whether the bodies were ever treated with respect once they left the grave. Some say the surgeons spoke to them like patients, like teachers, in a lesson that only death could give. Others say they were just meat cold and silent beneath the bright blade. You don't know. You're not there to see. You reach the back door of the surgeon's workshop, your knock soft and quick. The door creaks open, and a hand reaches out to take the bundle from your shoulders. A coin purse changes hands heavy, but never heavy enough to wash the memory of what you've done from your mind. You don't speak. There's no need. You turn and slip back into the night, the sound of the surgeon's door closing behind you, like the last breath of the dead man you carried. You walk home through the quiet streets, the weight of the night pressing against your skin. You wash your hands in the cold water of the fountain, though you know the stain won't come off that easily. You lie down on your narrow bed, the straw rustling beneath you, and close your eyes. In your dreams you dig and dig and dig, the earth never ending, the darkness never lifting. But when the sun rises, you'll be up again, the shovel in your hand, the weight of the dead in your heart. Because in this world someone has to feed the hunger of the living, even if it means stealing from the silence of the grave. And tonight, that someone was you. The day dawns cold and bright, the smell of wood smoke and fresh bread filling the narrow streets. Today you're not trudging through filth or creeping through graveyards. Today you're an alewife brewer of the drink that keeps this medieval town's spirits alive, one warm pint at a time. Your small brewhouse is a jumble of barrels and wooden tubs, copper kettles gleaming in the morning light. You stoke the fire in the hearth, the crackle and hiss of flames a promise of the work ahead. You're up to your elbows in barley and hops before most of the town has stirred from their beds. Historians still argue whether alewives were respected for their skill or scorned for daring to run a trade of their own. You know the truth, the town needs its ale and you need the coin it brings, so you keep your head down, your stirring stick in hand, and let the sweet sour scent of fermenting wort fill the air. You measure the grain with a practiced eye, pouring it into the mash tun with a soft hiss. The water steams as it hits, turning the grain to a thick bubbling porridge. You stir it slow and steady, your arms strong from years of coaxing the best from every batch. A quirky tidbit, some alewives sang songs as they worked, lilting ballads and scraps of half-forgotten prayers, as if music itself could bless the brew. You hum a tune as you stir the melody, weaving between the clank of the kettle and the crackle of the fire. The town's already stirring by the time the mash is ready, the first customers of the day drifting through your door like bees to a hive. They come with coins and empty mugs, faces creased with sleep, and the promise of a long day ahead. You ladle out the ale, the warm yeasty scent a comfort in the cold morning air. You know them all by name, the blacksmith with arms thick as barrels, the washerwoman with her cracked hands and tired smile. They come to you for more than ale. They come for the warmth of your hearth, the laughter that bubbles up like the foam on your brew. Historians still debate whether alewives were truly masters of their craft or just women scraping by, in a world that offered them few choices. You know the answer. Every time you see the satisfaction in a drinker's face, the flush of warmth in their cheeks as they tip back the mug, but it's not always easy. The ale must be strong enough to satisfy, but not so weak that the ale taster finds you for cheating your customers. You measure the hops with care, your fingers stained green from the fragrant cones. You taste and taste again, the sharp tang of bitterness, a promise of balance and strength. Outside the world is hard. The taxes bite deep, the lords demand their share, and the church casts a suspicious eye on any woman who makes her own coin. But inside your brewhouse, the warmth of the fire and the sweet scent of the ale make it feel, if only for a moment, like you've carved out a place that's yours alone. A rat scurries across the floor and you chase it out with a hiss and a broom. You're no stranger to rats, though. you'd rather they stayed out of your barrels. You check the wooden taps and the iron hoops of the kegs, tightening them with the practiced flick of your wrist. By midday the ale is ready, rich and dark in the barrel. You strain it into jugs, the sweet liquid sloshing as you work. The drinkers come in a steady stream, some with copper coins, some with gossip and laughter. You listen to them all, your smile quick and easy, though your mind is always on the next batch, the next boil, the next chance to get it just right. A quirky tidbit, some say alewives were witches, their kettles bubbling with more than barley and hops. You laugh at the rumours, though you know better than to tempt fate. The only magic here is the patience and care that turns grain and water into something more. As the day wears on, the brewhouse fills with the clatter of mugs and the soft hum of conversation. You move through it all with a quiet grace, your hands sure and your mind sharp. You know the measure of each man's thirst, the way a good ale can smooth the edges of a hard day. Historians still debate whether the alewife's place was truly her own, or just another corner of a world built by men. You know that here in the warm glow of the hearth, and the sweet sharp tang of the ale, you are the mistress of this small kingdom. As the sun sets, you ladle out the last pint, the foam bright and white in the flicker of the fire. You wipe your hands on your apron and lean against the counter, your body tired, but your spirit buoyed by the soft laughter that fills the room. You close the shutters and bank the fire, the last of the warmth flickering in the darkness. You wash the mugs in the cool water of the well, your fingers red from the chill. You hum a lullaby as you work the old tune, carrying you through the quiet. And when the last mug is clean, and the last customer gone, you lie down on your narrow bed, the smell of hops and yeast still clinging to your hair. Outside the night stretches long and quiet, but inside the warmth of your hearth and the memory of the day's laughter keep the darkness at bay. Tomorrow the barrels will be empty and you'll start again, grain and water, heat and time. Because in this world someone has to keep the ale flowing, and tonight that someone was you. You're awake before dawn, a shiver in your spine as you tie your ragged scarf around your neck. Today you're small and sooty, the youngest of the lot, and your job is to crawl up the narrow chimneys of the city, scraping, coughing, and trying to keep the black soot from clogging your lungs. You're a child chimney sweeper shadow slipping between stone and smoke. Your master waits for you in the street, his breath steaming in the cold air, as he eyes the chimney pots rising above the sleeping town. His gloved hand rests heavy on your shoulder, his voice a gruff command in the half-light. Up you go, lad. The city won't wait for clean flues. You take a deep breath and climb the ladder, each rung slick with morning dew. The chimney's mouth is a dark, narrow slit above you, a gaping maw that swallows you whole as you wriggle inside. The soot clings to your clothes, your hair, your skin. It's in your mouth, gritty and bitter, and you can feel it working its way into your very breath. Historians still argue whether child sweeps were truly seen as expendable or as a necessary evil in the war against fire. You know it doesn't matter. The city needs its warm hearths, and someone has to keep the smoke flowing free. Your small hands find the rough brick, each stone cold and slick with tar. You pull yourself upward, inch by inch, your arms and legs straining with the effort. The brush tied to your waist scrapes along the walls, stirring clouds of soot that sting your eyes and make you cough. You clench your teeth and keep climbing. There's no other way but up. A quirky tidbit, some say the soot of the chimney sweep was a lucky charm, a smudge of black to ward off evil spirits and bring good fortune. You'd trade every smudge for a breath of clean air, but you keep going, because the city's fires never sleep and neither can you. The chimney grows tighter as you climb the bricks, pressing in against your shoulders. You wriggle like a worm in the dark, your muscles aching with the strain. The soot falls in soft drifts around you, a black snow that sticks in your hair and fills your mouth. You try not to think about the stories you've heard of boys who got stuck and never saw the sky again. Historians still debate whether the small size of the sweep was a matter of necessity or cruelty. You know the answer in your bones, it's both. The chimney is too tight for a grown man, but just right for a boy. A boy like you, thin and ragged and too small to say no. You pause to catch your breath, your heart thundering in your chest. You can hear the faint crackle of the fire far below the distant clink of pots on the hearth. You wonder what the family below thinks of you, the silent shadow in their walls, scraping and scuttling like a ghost. You reach the top at last, the ski a pale smudge of light through the soot-dark opening. You push the last clump of blackened brush through the chimney pot and gasp at the rush of cold air on your face. You scramble out onto the roof, your legs shaking, your fingers black with grime. You sit there for a moment, the city spread out below you in the soft light of dawn. You can see the market square, the river winding away into the hills, the smoke rising in gentle curls from the hundreds of other chimneys. You wonder if every one of them has a boy like you hidden in its walls. A crow caws from a nearby gable, its eyes bright and sharp. You watch it for a moment, envying its freedom. Then you climb back down your master, waiting at the bottom with a nod and a slap on the back. "Good work, boy," he says, though the words are thin comfort in the cold morning. You drink from a bucket of water, the soot washing from your face in greasy streaks. Your fingers are raw and red, your lungs burning with every breath. But you're alive and the city's hearths are clean, and that's enough for today. Historians still debate whether chimney sweeps ever found a way out, whether they grew tall enough to escape the narrow flues, or simply learned to live with the blackness in their lungs. You don't have an answer. All you know is that tomorrow you'll climb again, because the fires never sleep and the city never stops needing the small and the silent. You walk home through the quiet streets, your feet soft on the cobbles. The dawn is bright now, the city waking with the smell of bread and smoke and the promise of another day. You keep your head down, your thoughts already turning to the next chimney, the next climb. In your narrow bed that night, you dream of tight twisting tunnels, and the endless climb upward, the scrape of brick and the cough of soot. You dream of the cold rush of air at the top, the brief taste of freedom before you slip back down into the dark. Because in this world, someone has to keep the chimneys clean, and today that someone was you. You rise with the dawn, though the morning feels thick and heavy with the promise of another day of heat and steam. Today you're a soap boiler, toiling in a world of boiling cauldrons and caustic lye. A job that burns as much as it cleans, and one that leaves its mark on your skin and in your lungs. The workshop is already warm as you step inside the great iron kettles lined up like sentinels along the blackened brick walls. The smell hits you first, a sharp, acrid tang of lye and animal fat, something that clings to the back of your throat and seeps into your clothes until you feel like you're breathing it in with every breath. Historians still argue whether soap boilers were seen as craftspeople or simply another trade in the dirty labyrinth of medieval cities. You're not sure it matters when you're up to your elbows in animal tallow, your hands raw and red from the harsh bite of the lye. You start by hauling the blocks of tallow, great yellow lumps of animal fat that sweat and glisten in the morning light. You cut them into smaller pieces, each stroke of the knife sending a faint shudder through your arm. The fat is heavy and slick, clinging to your fingers even as you toss it into the bubbling cauldron. A quirky tidbit some soap boilers swore by adding herbs and flowers to their vats, trying to tame the stink with rosemary or lavender. You don't bother. You've learned that no sweet-scented sprig can mask the raw power of boiling fat and lye. You stoke the fire under the cauldron, the heat pushing at your face like an angry breath. The fat melts slowly, turning from solid lumps to a golden soup that bubbles and spits like a living thing. You stir it with a long wooden paddle, careful to keep your skin clear of the splashes. A single drop of lye can blister you to the bone, and you've seen enough scars on the older soap boilers to know you're no exception. The work is constant, a slow dance of stirring and feeding the fire. You move carefully, your arms aching with the weight of the paddle, your eyes stinging from the acrid steam. The workshop is a haze of heat and smoke, the walls slick with condensation that drips down in slow grimy rivers. Historians still debate how soap boilers balanced the risk of their craft with the need for cleanliness in a medieval world that didn't always value fresh skin. You know the answer lies somewhere in the hiss of the cauldron, the slap of fat against the paddle as you keep stirring, keep watching, keep sweating. You watch the fat and lye blend together a slow alchemy that turns death and filth into something that might wash the dirt away. It's a strange kind of magic, though it never feels quite clean. The cauldron roars and pops, each bubble a small reminder of the risk you dance with every moment. When the soap is thick enough, you ladle it out into wooden moulds, the warm heavy liquid slumping into the shapes that will harden and cure over the coming days. You smooth the tops with the back of a spoon, your hands slick and slippery with sweat and oil. A rat scurries across the floor, its paws leaving tiny prints in the soapy grime. You watch it vanish under the door, a reminder that even here in the steamy heart of the soap house, the city's dirt and darkness can't be banished completely. As you work, your mind drifts to the people who will use this soap, the housewives scrubbing their floors, the washerwomen kneeling by the river, the children squealing as they're scrubbed pink and clean. You wonder if they know the cost of that creamy bar in their hands, the burns, the coughs, the nights spent scrubbing your own hands raw with vinegar and salt to ease the sting of the lye. Historians still argue whether soap really kept the plague at bay, or was just another ritual of false hope. You don't know. You only know that the city demands it, that cleanliness is a prayer as much as a practice, and that your work is as essential as the baker's bread or the blacksmith's hammer. You finish the day with your arms trembling, your skin tight and tender from the heat. You wash your hands in a bucket of water, though it does little to soothe the red chapped skin. The smell of the soap lingers on your clothes, a sharp tang that you'll carry home like an invisible brand. You walk the narrow streets with your shoulders hunched against the evening chill, the weight of the day pulling at your spine. The city is winding down, the last of the market stalls packing up the glow of lanterns flickering in the doorways. You lie down in your small bed, the straw mattress prickly against your tender skin. You close your eyes and dream of bubbling cauldrons and the sharp bite of lye of white bars of soap stacked high in the cool darkness of the storeroom. Because tomorrow the city will need more, and someone has to stand in the heat and the steam, someone has to brave the blisters and the burns, and tonight that someone was you. The morning sun glints off the iron tools, you carry a cruel glimmer that matches the hard edge of your trade. Today you're the tooth drawer, a medieval dentist of sorts, though no one would dare call you that in this world of wincing grins and aching gums. You're a man with strong hands and a steady nerve, and that's all the people need to know. The market square is already alive as you set up your stool, the rough boards creaking under your weight. You lay out your tools, rusty pliers, a mallet, a collection of small jagged knives, and watch as the curious gather round. The air smells of roasted meat and sweat, but beneath it you can taste the sharp tang of fear. Historians still argue whether tooth drawers were charlatans or legitimate healers. You know it's somewhere in between. You've seen what an abscess can do, how it swells a man's face like a melon and drives him mad with pain. You know the relief that comes when the rotten tooth is gone, even if the price is steep. Your first customer is a woman with a swollen cheek and eyes bright with tears. She sits before you, her hands clenched in her lap. You tilt her chin back, your fingers sure and quick. It'll hurt, you say softly, though you don't have to. She nods anyway, her lips already trembling. A quirky tidbit, some medieval tooth drawers offered a strong shot of ale or wine before the pulling began, a numbing agent and a bribe in one. You hand her a flask, the cheap wine sloshing inside, and she drinks deep, her eyes closing for a moment as the warmth spreads through her chest. You grip the tooth with your pliers, the metal cold and slick in your hand. The woman's breath comes in quick gasps, her fingers white-knuckled on the edge of the stool. You brace your arm and pull. The tooth doesn't come easy, it never does. You feel it shift, feel the sinews stretch and tear, and then it's free, a bloody shard of pain cradled in your palm. She cries out, the sound swallowed by the murmur of the crowd. You drop the tooth into a small wooden cup, its hollow rattle lost in the noise. You hand her a cloth to press to the wound, her lips pale and trembling as she staggers away. You wipe the pliers on your apron, though the blood never truly leaves the iron. You glance around and another man steps forward, one hand pressed to his jaw, his face pale with the dread of what he's seen. You don't ask his name, you don't need to. Pain speaks a language older than any coin. Historians still debate whether tooth drawers knew what they were doing or just learned by trial and error. You suspect it's both. You've learned which teeth break and which slide free with a clean snap, though the difference is small comfort when your hands are slick with blood and your ears ring with screams. The line never ends, poor folk and rich alike, because rotten pain know no station. Each one comes with the story of nights spent pacing the floor of meals, left uneaten of the endless gnawing ache. You listen with half an ear as you work your mind on the next tooth, the next tug, the next muffled cry. A rat scurries under the stools unnoticed by all but you. You watch it for a moment, its quick, furtive movements, a reminder that life in the city is never far from the shadows. You shift your weight on the stool and call the next patient forward. By noon, your hands are trembling, your arms sore from the effort. You take a moment to drink from the well, the cold water washing the sweat from your throat. You catch your reflection in the water's rippled surface, your eyes shadowed, your mouth set in a hard line. You wonder if you're any better than the tooth you just pulled half rotten and hanging on by a thread. Historians still argue whether tooth drawers were ever thanked for their work. You know it happens sometimes, a rough pat on the back, a muttered word of gratitude from a mouth that no longer aches. But more often, they just slip away, clutching the rag to their jaw and trying not to look back at the stool, the tools, the man who wears other people's pain like a second skin. As the sun begins to sink, you pack away your tools, the pliers clinking together like bones in a sack. You wipe the sweat from your brow with a cloth that's already stained and stiff. You walk home through the quiet streets, your boots soft on the cobblestones. Your room is small and dark, the single window clouded with soot. You wash your hands in a chipped basin, the water turning pink as you scrub. You close your eyes and let the ache of the day settle into your bones. Tomorrow there will be more teeth to pull, more jaws to cradle in your rough hands, more lives to ease with a swift, brutal twist of iron. Because in this world someone has to take the pain away, and tonight that someone was you. The first light of dawn finds you at the alchemist's door, the faint glimmer of the forge inside, promising warmth and danger in equal measure. Today you're the alchemist's assistant and apprentice to a man who claims to hold the secrets of the world in his bubbling cauldrons and his dusty scrolls. You tie your ragged apron tight, the stiff cloth stained with soot and strange powders. The air in the workshop is thick with the sharp tang of sulphur and the sweet rot of old herbs. You're careful as you step inside. The floor is littered with shards of glass and lumps of half-finished experiments, each one a lesson in caution and curiosity. Historians still argue whether alchemists were true scientists or just dreamers chasing golden glory. You know that for the assistant, the truth hardly matters. You're the one who carries the buckets of water, who grinds the powders, who holds the bellows steady when the master's mind is lost in the dance of the flames. The master waves you over his hair, wild around his face like a halo of smoke. His eyes gleam with the fever of discovery, or maybe just the fumes of the mercury he handles with bare fingers. "Stoke the fire," he says, his voice low and quick like the hiss of steam. "We're close, boy, closer than ever." You feed the flames, the bellows groaning as you work. The forge crackles and roars, the copper retort glowing red, as the mixture within begins to bubble and seethe. The master mutters to himself scraps of Latin and half-remembered prayers weaving together in the haze of heat and ambition. A quirky tidbit: some alchemists believed that if you could distill the right mixture of metals and herbs, you could turn base lead into shining gold. The philosopher's stone, they called it a dream that shimmered just out of reach. You've never seen gold in the bottom of the crucible, but you've seen the burns on your arms, and the way the master's eyes gleam when the mixture froths just so. You grind the powders in a small bronze mortar, the pestle cold and heavy in your hand. The dust clings to your skin, a rainbow of colours that burn your throat and sting your eyes. You try not to breathe too deeply, though the master insists the fumes are purifying. You've seen the old assistant's cough, the way he doubled over and vanished one winter's night, and you're not so sure. Historians still debate whether alchemy was a fool's errand or the first spark of true science. You see the truth in the quiet moments, the careful weighing of powders, the slow coaxing of metal and flame, and you see the madness in the way the master's hands shake as he peers into the crucible, searching for something he can't quite name. You keep the fire steady, your muscles aching from the effort. The mixture hisses and spits the smell of burning resin thick in the air. The master adds a pinch of something silver, and the mixture flares bright as the sun, the light so harsh it blinds you for a moment. You stagger back the room, spinning as spots of colour dance before your eyes. The master laughs a sharp, brittle sound that rings in the stone walls. "We're close, boy," he says again, his voice bright with triumph or madness, you can't tell which. A rat scurries along the rafters, its eyes gleaming in the glow of the forge. You watch it vanish into the shadows, a small quick life that has no care for gold or glory. You envy it just a little. The day wears on, the work never slowing. You pour water into the cooling bath, the hiss of steam like a sigh from the stones themselves. You wash the residue from the glass beakers, careful not to let the sharp shards bite your fingers. You taste metal on your tongue, the ghost of the forger's breath in every swallow. Historians still argue whether the alchemist's assistants were truly part of the knowledge, or just another tool like the mortar and the pestle. You feel the weight of both as you scrub the benches, clean the master's words still echoing in your ears. As night falls, the master finally calls a halt. The forge glows like a dying sun, the embers soft and sullen in the dark. You wash your hands in a bucket of cold water, though the stains of the powders cling to your skin like memories. You walk home through the quiet streets, the night air cold and clean after the thick heat of the forge. You close your eyes and see the crucible's glow, the swirl of colours that promise everything and nothing in equal measure. You lie down on your straw mattress, the rough wool blanket scratchy against your skin. You dream of fires that never die, of metals that sing as they melt, of the master's laughter and the taste of mercury on your tongue. Because tomorrow the forge will roar again and the master will whisper of gold and glory and the secrets of the world. And someone has to hold the bellows, someone has to taste the ash. And tonight, that someone was you. The first pale rays of dawn barely pierce the thick fog that blankets the city as you shoulder your shovel and set out for the edge of town. Today you're a plague burial worker, one of the silent, shrouded figures tasked with carrying away the bodies that no one else will touch. Your steps crunch on the frozen earth, the chill seeping through your boots and into your bones. The cart creaks ahead of you, the wheels rattling over the cobbles. Inside, the dead lie in rough heaps wrapped in linen that is already stiff with frost. The sweet rot of decay is dulled by the cold, but it's there a faint perfume of death that never quite leaves your nostrils. Historians still argue whether plague burial workers were seen as heroes or harbingers of doom. You feel like both. Every time you touch the dead, you're playing dice with the plague, gambling your own breath for a few copper coins and a chance to keep going just one more day. You pause at the edge of the graveyard, your breath misting in the air. The pit gapes before you. a black wound in the earth that seems to swallow the light. It's deep, deeper than you ever want to think about, and the bottom is already crowded with the pale shapes of yesterday's labour. You climb down carefully, your boots slipping on the frozen mud. The shovel's weight is familiar in your hand, the splintered wood worn smooth by years of work. You begin to dig the blade, biting into the cold earth, with a sound that feels too loud in the silent dawn. A quirky tidbit, some said that burying the dead could earn you a place in heaven, an act of mercy that might balance the scales of your own sins. You're not sure if you believe it, but you cling to the thought anyway, a small comfort in a world that's turned to ash. You haul the first body down from the cart, the weight of it a jolt in your arms. The linen is damp with morning dew, the shape beneath it shrouded and still. You lower it into the pit with a muttered prayer, though you're not sure who you're praying to anymore. You work quickly, your breath coming in soft clouds that vanish into the cold air. The shovel moves in a steady rhythm, lift, toss, settle. Each body is another silent reminder that the plague doesn't care about names or titles, about gold rings or fine cloaks. In the end, everyone lies in the same cold ground. Historians still debate whether burial workers were truly safe, their masks of waxed cloth and vinegar-soaked rags enough to keep death at bay. You feel the chill in your chest with every breath, the faint ache that might be nothing, or the start of the same fever that's claimed so many before you. The sun climbs higher, but the light does nothing to warm you. The pit grows deeper, the bodies stacked in careful layers like some grim harvest. You pause to drink from a cracked flask, the water cold and bracing in your throat. You watch the steam rise from the cart's fresh load and try not to think about the families that mourn behind shuttered windows. A rat scurries across the edge of the pit, its small feet quick and sure. You watch it for a moment, a small flicker of life in a world that feels swallowed by death. You wonder if the plague will come for it too, or if rats are beyond such fears. The grave grows deeper still, the weight of the earth pressing in around you. You can feel it in your spine, a dull, constant pressure that reminds you just how easy it would be to slip, to vanish beneath the dirt and the silence. You force the thought away and keep working. 'Cause someone has to. Someone has to carry the dead from the city to give them a place to rest, even if no one comes to mourn. And if you stop, if you falter for even a moment, the bodies will pile in the streets, the stench and the sorrow a second plague all their own. Historians still argue whether the burial workers found comfort in each other, whether they shared a quiet brotherhood in the shadow of the grave. You think maybe they did. You nod to the others as you pass, each of you bound by the same silent vow to keep digging, to keep going, even when the world seems determined to bury you too. As dusk falls, you climb out of the pit, your muscles trembling with exhaustion. The cart is empty, the grave full. You stand for a moment at the edge, your breath ragged in the cold air. You murmur another prayer, this one for yourself, though you're not sure if anyone's listening. You trudge home through the dark streets, the weight of the day pressing on your shoulders. The city is quiet now, the lights in the windows flickering like distant stars. You wash your hands in cold water that bites your skin, though you know the smell of the grave will linger long after the soap is gone. You lie down on your narrow bed, the straw rustling beneath you. In the darkness you can still see the pit, the silent ranks of the dead, the flicker of the lantern in the cold air. You close your eyes and tell yourself you're just a man with a shovel, just a man trying to live in a world that's forgotten how. Because tomorrow the carts will be full again. The plague doesn't sleep, and neither can you. And tonight that someone was you. The morning sun peeks over the low hills, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold as you heft your shovel over your shoulder. Today you're a ditch digger, the man who shapes the world with sweat and steel, digging deep so that water can flow, walls can stand and roads can stay dry. The road stretches before you, a rutted path that cuts through fields of green and muddy furrows. Your boots sink into the soft earth as you walk, the weight of the shovel a steady ache in your hands. The ditch you're set to dig is marked with wooden stakes, a rough line of progress in a world that rarely changes. Historians still argue whether ditch diggers were honoured for their hard work or ignored like the dirt they moved. You know there's no honour here, just calluses on your palms and a back that never stops aching. But the work is steady, and the coins it brings keep bread on the table and a roof over your head. You pause at the edge of the site, the early morning mist rising from the damp ground. You plant the shovel's blade in the earth and begin each scoop of soil a slow rhythm that matches the thump of your heart. The dirt is heavy and wet, clinging to the blade as you toss it aside. A quirky tidbit: some believe that ditch diggers could predict the weather by the feel of the earth in their hands, the weight of the soil, the taste of the air. You're not sure if that's true, but you know that rain makes your job 10 times harder, and the sun can crack the dirt like old bone. The work is slow and steady, each inch of the ditch a battle won with sweat and breath. The shovel bites deep, your shoulders burning with each lift and toss. You find a rhythm in it, a silent song that carries you forward through the long hours. Historians still debate whether the ditches you dig are a mark of progress, or of the endless need to fight back the water that wants to swallow the fields whole. You don't care either way. You just keep digging, the soft scrape of the blade and the heavy thud of the earth your only companions. You pause to wipe the sweat from your brow, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The fields around you are green and full of life, wheat and barley nodding in the breeze, the soft buzz of bees among the flowers. You wonder if the farmers see you as a part of that life or just another shadow at the edge of the field. The ditch grows longer as the day wears on the line of turned earth, a scar in the soft green. You work with your head down, your thoughts narrowed to the next shovelful, the next foot of progress. Your back aches, your arms tremble, but you don't stop. Because you know the water will come, and if the ditch isn't ready, the fields will drown and the roads will vanish beneath the flood. A rat scurries along the edge of the ditch, its small feet quick and clever. You watch it for a moment, envy in your heart for the way it moves so easily through the world. But then you turn back to your work because the ditch isn't going to dig itself. By midday you pause for a drink of water, the cool liquid a balm to your parched throat. You eat a crust of bread, the hard loaf rough in your mouth. You watch the clouds drift across the sky, your thoughts as slow and heavy as the shovel in your hand. Historians still debate whether ditch diggers dreamed of something more, whether they looked up from the dirt and saw a different life waiting just beyond the horizon. You don't know. You're too busy with the next shovelful, the next breath, the next inch of ditch. The sun begins to sink, the sky painted with fire as you lift the last shovelful of the day. You lean on your shovel, your breath ragged and your back screaming. The ditch stretches behind you, a line of darkness in the fading light. You feel a flicker of pride, small and quiet, but there. You've shaped the earth today, bent it to your will for a little while. You walk home in the twilight, your boots heavy with mud, your hands blistered and raw. The world is quiet around you, the soft sigh of the wind through the fields the only sound. You think of the ditch, the way it will guide the water and save the crops, and you wonder if anyone will remember that it was you who carved it from the earth. You wash your hands in the cool water of the well, the dirt swirling away in slow spirals. You watch it vanish and think of the ditch, the endless earth that waits for you again tomorrow. You lie down in your narrow bed, the ache in your shoulders, a dull thrum that pulls at the edges of your sleep. In your dreams, you're digging, still the rhythm of the shovel carrying you through the dark. And when you wake, you'll pick up the shovel again, because in this world someone has to keep the water at bay, someone has to carve the lines that keep the city safe. And tonight, that someone was you. The sky is a pale grey as you make your way back to the square, your breath hanging in the morning air like ghostly smoke. Today you're the executioner's assistant, the man who steps in when the axe has fallen and the crowd has gone home, the man who cleans up what no one else wants to see. The scaffold is slick with dew, the wood dark and cold beneath your boots. You carry a bucket of sand and a stiff-bristled brush tools of a trade that few would envy. The executioner stands silent nearby, his heavy hood pulled low over his face. He nods to you, a gesture that's equal parts command and weary recognition. Historians still argue whether the executioner's assistant was a necessary part of justice, or just another shadow in the theatre of death. You don't care about that. You care about the stains on the wood, and the weight of the bodies you'll carry before the dawn has properly broken. You kneel beside the block, your fingers numb from the cold. The blood is still fresh, the bright red already turning dark and sticky. You sprinkle the sand, working it into the wood with the brush, scrubbing in slow, steady circles. The sound is soft, almost soothing. A whisper of bristles and grit that seems out of place in the quiet square. A quirky tidbit, some said the blood of the executed carried a special power, an omen, a charm, or a curse depending on who you asked. You don't believe in that, though you keep your head down, and your thoughts your own. The only power here is the silence that follows the final blow. You stand when the work is done, your knees aching from the cold and the weight of the task. You nod to the executioner, and together you move to the bodies. They're heavy in your arms, but you lift them with practiced care, your fingers curling around limbs gone cold and limp. You carry them to the cart, laying them side by side in the straw, each one another name lost to the quiet dawn. Historians still debate whether executioners' assistants were hardened to their work or haunted by every body they carried. You feel a little of both. The weight of the dead never leave your shoulders, even when the cart is empty and the scaffold scrubbed clean. The sun rises as you finish your work, the square slowly filling with the sounds of another day merchant setting up their stalls, the clatter of hooves on cobblestones. But for a moment there's only you and the quiet weight of the task you've done. You wash your hands in a bucket of cold water, the chill biting at your skin. You scrub until the blood is gone, though you know it will never quite leave you. You look up at the scaffold, the wood pale and clean now in the morning light. It's a strange kind of beauty, a blank canvas waiting for the next act in the city's endless play. A rat scurries along the edge of the square, its tiny feet quick and silent. You watch it vanish beneath a barrel, a small reminder that life always finds a way to slip through the cracks. You shoulder your bucket and your brush, and turn away your boots soft on the worn stone. Historians still argue whether the executioner's assistant was a servant of justice or a tool of fear. You're not sure. You're just a man with a bucket and a brush, a man who knows that the blood doesn't vanish just because the crowd turns away. You walk home through the quiet streets, the cold morning air sharp in your lungs. The city is waking, the smell of bread and the soft murmur of voices rising around you. But you keep your head down, your mind already on the next dawn, the next wait, the next quiet cleaning in the shadows. You lie down in your narrow bed, the straw rustling beneath you, and close your eyes. You dream of water and sand, of the slow steady scrub that erases the stains but not the memory. And in the hush of the night you tell yourself that in this world someone has to clean up what's left behind. And today that someone was you. The night has settled soft and deep around you now, the hush of the city quiet and warm. You feel the weight of the day in your bones, the stories of those forgotten workers folding around you like a heavy blanket. The flicker of a lantern in a distant window, the faint rustle of straw, as you shift small comforts in a world that demands so much from those who toil in its darkest corners. Your breath slows each inhale a little deeper, a little softer. You remember the press of your boots in the cold mud, the scrape of the shovel, the hush of bristles on old wood. The world is still out there, the work waiting with the dawn, but for now you let it slip away. You think of the hands that shaped the gallows, the feet that climbed the chimneys, the shoulders bent beneath the weight of night soil and plague carts. Each one a quiet soul in a world that didn't always see them, each one a heartbeat that kept the city alive in ways no one ever noticed. The wind sighs against the shutter, a soft song to carry you deeper into the dark. You feel the weight of the stories lifting from your shoulders, the echo of each job's rhythm fading like the last ember of a fire. You're safe here, in this quiet place where no axe swings, no pit waits, no cauldron bubbles with danger. Let your breath carry you further from the dirt and the din into a sleep as deep as the grave and as soft as fresh-turned earth. Let the memories of these workers fade like smoke in the morning light. You are here and you are safe, and tonight sleep comes easy.